I never thought when I started my debate journey that I would one day become a world champion. But all of that was like a sum of my experiences that has led to that. I don't know if you've watched the movie Slumdog Millionaire, but that's where like that movie is where like you see a lot of those experiences translating to that particular game show that was there in the movie. If you haven't watched it. So navigating through a bumpy track, I came up with this headline when I was watching the Singaporean Grand Prix, which is a Formula 1 reference, because it's a street circuit, it has a lot of bumpy tracks, and I thought that resembles my life a bit, so I thought I'd just go through it. So in my early childhood, if you look at this particular like image here, you'll see there's a big back. That's not where I studied. It's the small sort of rooms that you see, and it's that small place where I started my schooling. Now, this is quite important because if I recall back to my time, when I was just a 5th grader, there was an impromptu speech competition in our school. And our school didn't have a lot of students. It was mostly like 10 to 15 students per class. It was a very small sort of homely environment in that school. And I participated in that impromptu speech competition. But what happened is that they used to give us a bit of time to prepare for our speech, write our speeches, and then go up. I was preparing for my speech, I wrote my speech, and somehow within that very small period of time, I lost that script. So my principal was there in that school, and what she saw at that moment was every kid is coming up on the stage with a script. This kid comes up without a script, gives a speech, and somehow she is quite impressed with that speech. And with that she thought, you know what, this kid can go into the debate team of the school, and that sounds like a good idea. Now that sounds all fine and all, but there's a very small problem here. Inter-school debate tournaments, of you have been to them, even in Chittagong. This is in Chittagong, by the way, this is where I grew up. Even there, it's mostly the 9th and 10th graders and mostly 11th and 12th graders that go to debate competitions, and 9th and 10th graders are probably the younger ones in that crowd. I was just a 5th grader. I didn't know much about it back then. I was just put into the debate team of the school. I don't know why the principal thought that would be a good idea, because I got absolutely smashed in my first competition. I was like, what is happening? Why are these 9th graders speaking so fast? And why do they speak so much better than me? And that was quite the experience. But what that resulted in, that very small experience resulted in, is me not having a lot of problems that a lot of people face when it comes to public speaking, stage fright, and a lot of other stuff. But that very small event, if that had not happened, maybe if I had not lost my script that day, maybe if I had given not that good a speech that day, just as a kid, I'm not saying I gave a great speech, it was just good for a 5th grader, maybe my life would have been quite different, right? But it's going to be quite different, because when I moved on from there, I went to 2 different schools later on, and I shifted to the national curriculum. Now the thing about national curriculum is that was my parents' choice in the line of education that I wanted to get at the time. It's not as good in terms of teaching you English per se. And the reasoning behind this is a lot of the instruction that happens in the classroom does not happen in English in these places. And that becomes a problem, not for most people, but for people who end up doing things that require you to have a command over the language, right? So I ended up going to national curriculum schools, and these schools, unlike my previous one, were not willing to give a 6th grader the opportunity to be in the school debate team. So I ended up actually not debating for a long, long time. But then I was struggling at the time because I still loved public speaking, I still loved to talk, but I didn't have an avenue to practice that in any way whatsoever. What I really wanted to do at that time is somehow learn English well, because I thought that would be something that's good later in my life. My mom's a doctor, she said that would be something that's good, so I tried to follow that. And it was quite unique in the way in which I attribute my learning to English to. This is what it is. Learning English through satellite dish. Now, I'm not sure if you are like wary of these references or you can relate to any of them. The first one is Ash Ketchum in Pokemon trying to get his first Pokeball. See, a lot of people do get it. The second one, SpongeBob SquarePants from Nickelodeon. That seems to be quite popular. The third one, the best of both worlds, Hannah Montana. Now I have an interesting story to tell about this. When I was a teenager, I never used to admit to the fact that Hannah Montana was my favorite show. Because it's too girly, right? It's not something that a teenage boy would admit to listening or like watching or listening to. It's almost like when Justin Bieber came out, you really like accept the fact that Justin Bieber was something that you like. I really liked Justin Bieber at the time. But people would think you're uncool if you admitted to that. I didn't have the courage to admit to that at the time. But these three shows did play a pivotal role in my life, in teaching me conversational English, in teaching me also stuff like the stuff that you learn in Hannah Montana, how to sort of navigate through your teenage life through a bit of fun as well. And taught me a lot of things on the way. And then I got into Notre Dame in my 11th grade, which is the best institutions in the country in the national curriculum system. This is where I rediscovered my passion for debating, because Notre Dame had a debate club that was the oldest in the country. The debate club is older than the country itself. It actually started during the Pakistan era. And it has a huge heritage going behind it. And started slowly rediscovering my passion for debate, despite the fact that the resources were still not as great. Like, we did not have a coach. It was mostly the seniors that taught us. We still ended up going to an international competition. That's my photo there with the Bangladeshi flag in front in the Asian Schools Debating Championship. We ended up as a novice finalist in that competition. We ended up losing the final there. But that's something, when I went to Asian Schools Debating Championship, I figured out that, like, I want to be, this is where I think I belong. I looked up to the people who came to judge. People like Syed Sadiq, who was a great debater. Now he was a minister in the Malaysian government. There were so many icons in the debate circuit that I looked up to them and said, this is what I want to become when I get into university and when I get into some form of university debating. But then there was this thing where, like, people in Notre Dame usually want to go to BUET. That's a thing there, because you study in national curriculum, you study in science, they want to become engineers. It's a very typically brown Bangladeshi thing where you really want to become an engineer. And that was me for a long, long time. But then I got into the debate circuit. I was like, is that really what I want to become? Do I really have that passion for like physics, mathematics? I realized I really don't have that much passion for that. And I was really looking for an answer. What do I really have a passion for? What I realized then is, when I was talking to the debaters in the debate circuit, the coolest ones are the ones that are from IBA-DU, and that's where I wanted to get into. And honestly, if you ask me, that is the reason why I wanted to get into IBA-DU. Not because it's the best business school in the country, but because the debaters from IBA-DU were really, really cool. I wanted to be like them. And that's when I got into IBA-DU and started being a part of the best in the country. It was one of the best clubs in Asia at the time. We had just broken into the knockout category of Worlds for the first time from Bangladesh there. It was my senior, Saad and Wasifa, from the previous batches in IBA-DU. And that was quite historical. That was something that etched a mark in me, because at the time we were not used to being in the big leagues. We never thought that we would hear the name of IBA-DU with Harvard, Stanford, Princeton. But that was the first time that happened. That truly changed for me what I thought was possible in debating at the time. But the problem with getting into one of the best debate clubs in the country is you have to navigate through heartbreaks, and not just in tournaments abroad or nationally, internally as well. For the first 2 years in my life, for the first 2 years in my university life, I did not get into the first team of IBA-DU, let alone being one of the best teams in the country, let alone being one of the best teams in Asia. It was heartbreaks for a long, long time. Here's my longtime teammate, Nawed. I won Worlds with Sajid later on, but Nawed is also one of my closest friends. The reason I have this photo is because these are like some happy photos from tournaments where we did not even qualify for the knockout rounds. And that was quite heartbreaking, because Nawed and I were good debaters in school. We thought this was going to work out, but it just ended up not working out somehow. It actually worked out for the both of us differently. We went into different teams. Nawed became a 2-time Asian finalist. It was all good. But at the time, it was quite heartbreaking to just struggle and not get any breakthrough, and know that there are other extracurricular activities that I could do instead. Like, I had won a business competition in my first year, so I thought maybe business competitions are something that I should pursue. But the issue was that the thrill of having those 7 minutes, having that topic 15 minutes before you get to speak about it, was something that had my heart. And what happens when it comes to love or something that you give your heart to is, it doesn't follow rationality a lot. Even though I am a debater, even though I'm supposed to talk about rationality, it's not rational at that point in time. It's just something that you love. It's just something that you pursue. And if you enjoy it, you just keep doing it at that point in time. So then we have a run of success, finally. It was Sajid and me. We first did well at Asians, and then when we went to Worlds, at the time, going to a Worlds quarterfinals from South Asia, only one team had done that before. That was IIT Bombay. We made the Worlds quarterfinals in a room where there was Oxford, Princeton, who went through defeating us in the quarterfinals. That was quite big for us, because that also showed to us that in our first Worlds, if we can do that, then we can do big things. We can win Asians, we can win Australasians, we can possibly win Worlds someday. But this was back in 2018, right? We won Worlds like a few days back. So what happened in the meantime? What happened in the meantime is something that some of you won't get. This is the 1999 World Cup semi-final between South Africa and Australia. What happened in that match is South Africa needed 9 runs in the last 6 deliveries. They scored 8 of the first 2, so they needed 1 of 4 deliveries remaining. That was quite easy, sounds quite easy, but here was the problem. There were 9 wickets down, and they had only 1 wicket left in the bag. And in the 4th ball in that over, Alan Donald was run out, and the match was tied. But here was the problem. Because Australia was at a higher rank in the group stage, Australia went through to the final, South Africa didn't. The reason I'm saying this is because Sajid and I have been to 2 Asian finals, 1 Asian semi-final, 2 Asian quarterfinals, 2 Worlds quarterfinals, 1 Australasian semi-finals, and we lost all of them, and most of them in very agonizingly close margins. 4-3 split, 2-1 split between judges, the judges not agreeing whether or not we win. And that's what kept happening in our lives. It was so close, yet so far, all the time. There was time I had to graduate at some point while doing this debating, sometimes forgetting about studies and all. I had to graduate at some point. But then I thought I would do a master's, because my mom has 3 post-graduation degrees. I have to try to at least get 1. Otherwise, it's a bit sad for the family, right? So I moved abroad, and finally you can see my team there that we did in Australasians. We won Australasians. We went into the tournament as one of the favorites because we had accolades before, and we ended up winning that. I ended up becoming the first Bangladeshi best speaker of Australasians in the history of the competition. And that was when I thought, you know what, maybe I do not have to be the South Africa of debating. Like, South Africa has never won a World Cup. That doesn't necessarily have to happen in my life. But here was the catch. I was in ANU. I was in Australia. I was in Canberra. I wanted to do Worlds, but here was the thing. I did 3 Worlds with Sajid. A debater can do up to 4 Worlds at max. And I really wanted to win it with Sajid. I really wanted to win it with Bangladesh. So then I came back. I got my job at the World Bank. And then I thought I would enroll for another master's, because as I said, my mom has 3 post-graduation degrees. Why not attempt at least 2 at this point? Sajid said he wants to enroll for master's as well. Well, that seems like a happy coincidence, right? And then we decided to give it a try for the last time. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't us walking into the rooms of Oxford and Princeton and fearing. This was us walking into the tournament as one of favorites. We had won Cambridge Intervarsity before. I had won Cambridge Intervarsity once with ANU even, so I won that tournament, which is one of the biggest tournaments in the world, twice in consecutive 2 years. So we entered the tournament as favorites, but there's the problem with entering a tournament as favorites. You have a lot of pressure on you, and we did have a lot of pressure on us at the time. But somehow, going through the stages, when we made the quarterfinals, that's when the jitteriness started. So we got knocked out in quarterfinals twice. This is going to happen again. But no, we made it through the quarterfinals. The semis debate was agonizingly close. Even we felt we could get out here. And Sajid said, you know what, I'd be happy with being a world semifinalist. Who could say that they had a world semifinal? Very few people in the world can claim that they ended up being world semifinalists, because that is also something that is a big achievement in the debate circuit. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. But then we also qualified for the finals. And That's when it was. That's when we realized a bit of history was already happening. For the first time in the history of World's Universities Debating Championship, there were 3 Asian teams in the final. And it was very rare to have one Asian team in the final in the last 3 decades of the history of the competition. There were very few times Asian teams even made finals, or actually even made semis for that matter, very few times. But history was happening right before us. And there was one crucial fact that was there. Asia had never won the World Championship before. And there were 3 teams. That's a 75% chance for Asia to win it. Who's going to do it? And we look across the room. It's our friends from Ateneo de Manila, Philippines. We have a lot of history. Rivalries in the Asian circuit. We have lost an Asian final to them. We've beaten them in Asian quarterfinals. We had it against each other. There was Oxford Ivy where they beat us in the finals. There was Cambridge Ivy where we beat them in the finals. It was a rivalry. It was getting a fitting end. And somehow, maybe because the topic in the finals was economics and I studied development economics in ANU, maybe that was something that helped. Maybe the fact that I generally like economics and finance topics, that was something that worked in our favor. But the stars aligned and we won the final. And despite having the actual trophy and the photo with an actual trophy, I decided to put this up. Because when I was a kid, there wasn't the internet to study about things. When I wanted to read about politics, international politics, etc., we used to get the paper. And there was Prothomalo all the time. Prothomalo had these fancy caricatures and fancy cartoons that I used to look in childhood and really get amused by. I never thought I would feature in the first page of Prothomalo with this particular cartoon. And that happened in my life. So in the end, even though I'm probably past my time, sorry to the organizers for that. I just want to quote Oprah Winfrey for just the last one. Just try to live your best life. Throughout my life, I've been focusing on debating, and a lot of other things have gone in the background in my life. But at the end, I did it because I loved it. And it ended up giving me a lot of happiness. Even if I lost that World's Finals. Heck, even if I lost the World's quarterfinals again in my 4th and last attempt at Worlds, I would still have not regretted a second of it. Because living my best life to me so far has been living with debating. And like, as Hannah Montana once said, life's what you make, let's make it rock. Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful life.